Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Hope Sessions podcast, where every week we want to give you encouragement through different means such as testimonies, dialogues with guests, along with diving into the scriptures and exploring the incredible life-transforming truths inside it. So with all that being said, here's another episode for you to tune into and listen to. God bless. Enjoy the episode. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Hope Sessions podcast with me, Jerry D. And today we've got a first-time guest. I know this woman for maybe about 2 or 3 years now because she's currently engaged to a good friend of mine called Sean Herrick, right? And what I love about this girl is that there's such a joy, there's such a gentleness about this woman that any room she comes into, she lights up the room with her energy, her enthusiasm, and just her kind spirit. Like, you just meet people and there's such a kindness on them that you just want to be around them. You just want to talk to them. And I'm so glad to say that it's the wonderful Roisin. She's a friend of mine, no stranger to having conversations with me. But Roisin, you're so welcome to coming onto the podcast for the first time. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. I'm good. Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Good. Right, Roisin, what we're going to do, girl, is I'm going to jump into a round called the rapid fire round. Are you ready?
Super. Go for it.
Right. Are you a morning or a night person?
Oh, morning. 100%. I have I 10 o'clock for bed and I'm good. I'm awake regardless early. So if the earlier I can get to bed, the better.
Wow. Right. Your favorite genre of music?
Ooh. Okay, that's a tricky one.
Okay.
I obviously love like worship, like anything City of Light, Sovereign Grace is my jam. Anything by the Gettys as well. But I'm a massive musicals fan.
Okay.
Always have been since I was about 14. So anything kind of musicals. At the moment, I'm listening to the Prince of Egypt West End soundtrack, and that is
Right.
amazing. Yeah. So anything
Okay.
musicals gets me happy.
Wow. Are you a Swifty?
Absolutely a Swifty. Absolutely a Swifty. Much to Sean's distaste, I am a Swifty.
Wow.
But yeah.
And because I'm only learning about the only thing I know about Taylor Swift is that she's
Mm,
dating the greatest tight end in NFL history, which is the wonderful Travis Kelce, right? Other than that,
yes.
I don't really care for her. I think I've listened to maybe one or two of her songs, but what is the obsession with Swifties? I actually don't get it. Legit.
Well, I would call myself a Swifty, but I wouldn't be like a diehard person who thinks she's like up on a pedestal. There's some
Okay.
real big ones out there. I ain't one of them.
Sure.
But I think she was kind of one of the first female artists that kind of came out kind of on her own and kind of wrote very raw and honest songs. And I think for like I first started listening to her when I was about 11.
Okay.
So for me, like her first like album Fearless, like she was real kind of like country coming into pop. I think she was just something really different at her time.
Hmm.
And I think she made a big headway for a lot of independent female artists to come through. So I think that was the appeal of her a lot of the time. Um, yeah. And she's been through like she's very honest and open about her struggles, which I think resonated with a lot of young girls through her music. And I know I have friends who certain songs have helped them through different points in time. So I think that's some of it anyway.
Wow. Yeah, because I mean, like, the girl is like one of the biggest, whatever you call her, pop stars out there, selling out
Yeah.
world tours just like that. I mean, I can't say I'm a Swiftie. I don't listen to that sort of genre of music, so I'm very oblivious
Yeah.
to the whole movement. I mean, what annoyed me as an NFL fan is that every time that Travis Kelce gets the ball or he
Mm-hmm.
scores, instead of putting the camera on him, because he
To put it
scored the
on her.
touchdown, it's on her, and she's just there with like a drink. Her little girl's going, ah! She's cheering, but she doesn't know what she's cheering for. She probably doesn't know what happened, you know. So it just goes to show you just the popularity that she has, that they would rather
Yeah.
focus on her than the actual game. So interesting,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. It's crazy like how much she's in the limelight for everything.
Yeah,
Like everything. They like she gets a cup of coffee and it's like front page news. You're like, all right, relax. Like she's getting a cup of coffee. Like
yeah,
it's not newsworthy, you know?
yeah, you know, yeah, yeah. Because I think she was in Australia. What was it? Maybe two or 3 weeks ago or so, part of her tour or whatever.
Mhm.
And Travis Kelce was there, and they literally had camera crews on helicopters following her around the
Stop.
zoo. Legit, yeah, yeah. Australian news was blowing up, obviously, because they've nothing else to talk about. So why not talk about Taylor
Yeah.
Swift, you know?
Oh my gosh. And follow her around the zoo like she's one of the animals. Like
Wow. Wow. Let's see. What is your favorite holiday that you've been on?
ooh. So I was very fortunate growing up that my grandparents would take myself and my sister and my parents to Spain nearly every year. It was like our one treat from our grandparents, and I have such special memories of my grandparents from that. We actually found photos from it last week. So there was one year that we went to Nurka, and I loved that. It was just a really, really happy time with all of
Mm,
my family. But then also, mine and Sean's first holiday was over to see our friend Roisin in Scotland
yeah,
and stay with her. And that was also a really, really happy holiday for me because I just got to see how happy my friend is over in her new life in Scotland. And it was
yeah,
mine and Sean's first kind of time away at all together
sure.
with Roisin. But yeah, so I say between the two of them because that was just a really special time for us.
Awesome. Because you brought up Sean, what is your favorite thing? One of your favorite things about Sean?
My favorite things about Sean, that's a tough question. I have a lot. um, I think one of my favorite things is his heart for other people.
Mm,
It's, I think, one of the ways that he reflects Christ so much. And it's one of the things I think that drew me to see him as more than a friend. He just has such a heart for serving people,
yeah.
but wants no recognition for it. Like he
Wow.
doesn't want it to be noticed. He doesn't want anything said about it, but he would go above and beyond for anyone. Like before we started dating, we were coming back from a worship concert in Belfast, myself
Yeah.
and two of the friends, and we had got a lift as far as Dungarvan and we're getting the bus. And the bus didn't show up, and it was 11 o'clock at night, and we were on the side of a dodgy road in Dungarvan.
Wow.
And Sean, we were still friends, and he had just texted me to be like, "Oh, hey, how did the concert go?" And I was like, "Oh, great," but like we're stuck on the side of the road. He had just finished a 12-hour shift, and he was like, "Right, let me eat my food, and I'm gonna come drive and get you guys." And I
Wow.
was like, "No, no, no, like you don't need to." And he was like, "I'm not leaving three of you stood on the side of the road." Now the bus came right at that moment, so he actually didn't have to, but he was gonna drop everything and drive, and it wasn't even a question to him. He would just come. So
Wow.
yeah, I think his heart for others and the way he wants to love like Christ, that's a big thing for me.
And that's the type of guy you're marrying. That's
I know.
incredible.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. God is
What a
good.
blessing. God
Wow.
is so good.
And are you a Netflix or a YouTube person?
Ooh, Netflix.
Hmm.
Netflix all the way. And Sean's more of a YouTube person. So it's a bit of a we're working on it, you know?
But see,
But
I understand why Sean is a YouTube person because
yeah,
he's
because he's
just
more
like me. Sports,
hockey.
look.
Yeah, I know. And see, then he can watch the ice hockey and all that. So
This makes life easy. You just have to become an ice hockey fan, a golf fan, an NFL, sorry, Arizona Cardinals fan. Let me
no,
specify that.
yeah. One mistake, one time with a hat, and I'll never live it down.
Wow. Wow. Let's see. What's your favorite verse or favorite book in the Bible to read?
Ooh. Oh. Favorite book? Ruth, I think.
Wow. That's
I
cool.
think. Yeah, we've done a couple of studies at it on camp, and I've just found them really impactful, and it's one I tend to go back to if I'm kind of struggling to get back into a routine of Bible study.
Awesome.
Um, Favorite verse would be Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in a future.
Wow. That's awesome.
That would be
Roisin,
mine.
this is the Hope Sessions podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone that comes on this podcast has a story of hope.
Mm-hmm.
How how they once didn't know Jesus. Jesus knew them all along, but they didn't have that
Mm-hmm.
living encounter with him. And you're a Christian, may I say, a wonderful Christian, someone who is a joy to be around. Genuinely, you've been in my house with Sean many a times, and I've got to spend some time with you and Sean when we went up to that wedding up in
Mm-hmm.
Own, and had some times where I've got to spend some time chatting with you, and it's been awesome, genuinely. And
Thank you.
I know your story because we've had many conversations, but our listeners
Mm-hmm.
may not know your story. So I want to hand it over to you. Would you
Mm-hmm.
share what life was like growing up to present day?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I only came to faith at age 20 in college. So I was raised in a practicing Catholic home, a very loving home.
Sure.
But I was taught about God. We went to mass. I was taught to say my prayers, but I kind of view God as this very far off figure who you prayed when you needed something and he was there.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't really know him. Um, so yeah, my when I grew up and I was in a very loving, supportive family, and I'm very, very grateful for that. Um, when I was about 10, I developed chronic migraine and vertigo.
Wow.
And I really, really struggled with that. My health was not good. I was in and out of school a lot. Um, and I just got a lot of anger at this God that I was thought about. I thought that I was praying and he wasn't answering my prayers. So he obviously didn't care about me. He didn't
Sure.
want anything to do with me. And I held a lot of anger and resentment at him. And yeah, that just really, really stuck with me. And I really struggled through my teen years massively with anxiety, with depression.
Yeah.
Off the back of it all, I didn't really do a lot of full weeks in secondary school. I was in and out of sick with the migraines, and my doctors didn't have a lot of answers for me as to why they were happening or treatment plans. Things got a bit better when I was about 17. I finally got to a physio who was able to relieve some of the pain from my neck. Life started getting back on track. And I started trying to pray again and look for God and find him somewhere. And it was always kind of in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
So then I started college with a bit of a fresher perspective, feeling more like I was able for everything. And I bumped into an old friend, Roisin Fahy, another Roisin. I had met her really briefly, like for a week, when we were doing like a drama program together in TY. And it was then that I learned that Roisin was a Christian with like capital C. And she just had such a heart for Jesus. She just wanted to share him and talk about him. And we became very close friends again. And she would share him all the time with our group in college. And we could ask any weird and evasive questions we wanted. And she was ready for him. It was great.
Wow.
But listening to her talk, I was so confused. I just didn't understand that there was this goodness in God that she could see and she could talk about. So I was asking so many questions. She invited me along to the Christian Union events in college, which was great. And I went along to a few of them, but halfway through my first year of college, COVID shut everything down.
Yeah.
So we were isolated at home again. And by the way, at this time, I was certainly not living a life that was anyway glorifying to God. I was drinking and partying and being a horrible person and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Looking for all the wrong ways to solve my anger and my pain and my sadness. It wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then during COVID, I was doing a couple of the online Zooms. But during COVID, I actually developed a second chronic illness. I developed functional neurological disorder. So out of the blue, I started having absent or dissociative seizures. So they're non-epileptic seizures, but I would go semi-conscious and I can't move or talk. I can kind of hear what's happening. And I can tick and fit a little bit. Along with this came a lot of brain fog, chronic fatigue. It was exacerbated by my pain, but it would also make my pain worse. So it's kind of a cycle. And yeah, I was not in a good headspace. I was back having some very depressive thoughts again.
Sure.
They weren't really sure what was happening at first. I became afraid to leave the house. I wouldn't go anywhere alone. I didn't want to be home alone. I wasn't sure I'd be able to finish college. I wasn't sure I would live to work in my career. I just was done. I was done. I got a bit better at leaving the house, but I still wasn't happy. We were coming up to starting placement in college. So I did early years in college. So I was going into a school and I was worried about being able to manage the kids and what would happen if I had an episode and all this. But we were in college doing some work on our assignments the first week we were back. And Roisin asked me to come along to the CU event that night. It was the first one back of the year.
Yeah.
And I actually had other plans, but for some reason when she was talking to me, I was like, I feel like I really need to stay. I don't know what this is, but it was outside and it was lashing rain. And it was outside in an hour. And I was like, I'm gonna stay around campus. I don't know why. Well, I do know now, but I didn't know at the time why I wanted to stay. So we were sat outside in the auditorium in UCC, and all of a sudden everyone started worshiping and singing praise to the Lord. And I had no idea what was happening. And all of a sudden this complete sense of peace just came over me.
Wow.
It was the first time in months I wasn't anxious or feeling like I was on the verge of tears for a bad reason or upset or hating my life. I just felt peace. And that was the Holy Spirit just coming down and Jesus talking to me. And I got really emotional. And then the talk that night was, is God real?
Wow.
Which I felt like was very to the point. So that night Roisin prayed over me and started bringing me to CU and to church, and the Lord was working in my heart. And then about 2 months later, I went to the CU weekend away down in Bandon. And I was still questioning a lot, and I wasn't sure why, God would want me, and did he love me? And I was really struggling with praying. I felt like I wasn't being raised Catholic. I felt like I had to say something the right way, or ask the right way, or say a certain prayer, and I was
Sure.
overthinking it. But the teaching that weekend was amazing, and it was really encouraging. And one morning I just snuck out of the dorm and I went to go read my Bible, and I just felt called to pray, and I did. And I just asked Jesus to take me, to accept my
Wow.
life for him, and he did, and it was amazing. So yeah, he's been amazing ever since. Like, I still struggle massively with my health. It's still a massive thing, but yeah, he's given me such an amazing environment to be supported by and grow in that. So it's been truly a blessing.
Wow. Just the power of a friend who believes in Jesus, just sending a
It's
simple invitation.
so underappreciated. People
Yeah.
people don't realize. We actually, myself and Roisin, have gone back to speak at a CU event about it, to be like, you don't understand. Like, it took 3 years. It was 3 years of me asking questions. We were trying to, if there's one thing I can encourage people to, it's don't be discouraged if someone isn't, if someone's asking questions and then they stop for a while. Like, the
Yeah.
whole time something was ticking over in my brain. It might take me 2 months to ask Roisin the next question, but what she was saying, and even the way she'd live her life or represent Jesus or talk about it with someone else near me, like, it all was making me question the
Yeah.
whole time.
It's funny you say that because I was the same with my brother Danny.
Mm.
Have you met my brother Danny?
I very briefly,
Okay,
very
yeah.
briefly.
Well, he was prior to Christ, he was a drug addict, alcoholic who was very
Mm.
suicidal, would cut himself, still got the scars on his arms to this day. And I remember when he was in a Christian rehab center for 18 months, he was only allowed one app called Viber. Remember Viber, the purple app, the
Yeah,
WhatsApp kind
yeah,
of thing. I think it's still going today, but we've moved on. We've graduated to
yeah.
WhatsApp.
We've
And
grown up.
I remember like he'd just be sending me like Bible verses, and one day he actually sent me a Bible, a small little Bible. And I was looking at him going, "Why you send me Bible verses, but I'm actually doing okay. I'm not the drug addict here. You are, you know."
Mm.
And
Yeah,
at that moment, that the gospel was really breaking into my own heart, so I understand what it's like to receive that invitation from someone.
yeah.
And kudos to Roisin for believing and acting upon what she believes because it's changed your eternity.
Oh, 100%.
You
And
know?
it's this one thing where I think it reminds me that, like, we never know what way the Lord is using us for his glory.
Yeah.
And like, it's definitely a way he's used her. And like, she's now living in Edinburgh in Scotland, and like, she has a whole life over there. But if everything hadn't happened, like, if we hadn't had, this is where I think it's just amazing to see God's hand through so much, like in so
Mm.
many intricate details. If someone hadn't come to my school to ask people to audition for a drama program and done the same for hers, and we both got in, and we both happened to have performances on the same weekend, we never would have met. We never would have been friends on Facebook. I
Yeah.
never would have seen Roisin post on Facebook that she was doing my course and get back in contact with her.
Wow.
Like, the way his web weaves is insane,
And
beyond human
sometimes
comprehension.
I think sometimes we don't look at the small intricate details, but I think it's so important to look back and
Mhm.
reflect on how the Lord Himself was weaving the connections together and
Yeah.
orchestrating things behind the scenes that we were so unaware of.
Mhm. Even
Wow.
stuff like, I got saved the month that Sean moved to Cork.
Wow. My
Like,
goodness.
it's crazy. Like, he
Wow.
is beyond comprehension. It is,
Yeah. And you
yeah.
mentioned about you have two chronic illnesses, one with migraine and the other one's with the
Mhm.
seizure related. And maybe people are hearing that and going, maybe they're confused by the title, right? Because it's quite a
Mhm.
lengthy title. But I
Yeah.
want to ask, what is it like on a day-to-day basis? Like is how severe is the pain? Does it affect your
Mhm.
focus? Do you have to, I suppose, be very careful about the energy you're using, that
Mhm.
kind of thing? What does it look like on a day-to-day basis?
A day-to-day basis, it looks like me managing everything while walking on a tightrope is the kind of vibe I think it
Wow.
gives it off. So with the chronic migraine, praise the Lord, it's a lot better than it was in my teen years, but it's still not gone.
Sure.
So the way I describe it is, with chronic pain, and it's very hard to understand if you haven't had chronic pain, is that you have a constant level of pain. And it's very hard for people to understand this if you haven't had it, and I completely appreciate that. But the way I describe it is, I constantly have about a 2 out of 10 pain. But to me, like, that's functional because I've lived with it so long. I spent half my teen years in bed with it. I've now gotten to the point that I can function through it. It takes a
Sure.
lot out of me, but I can function through it. But like during the day, I could have different spikes up to 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10. And then I have some days where I could have a whopper of a migraine where it's a 8 or 9 out of 10 and I'm in bed for the whole day. And I don't know. Mine is non-typical migraine, so there's no set triggers. They're not really entirely sure what happens that causes it, but that's the way mine works. And then with the functional neurological disorder, the FND, the main way that affects me is that my rest and my level of chronic fatigue can really affect how that is working. So if I'm really, the way I describe it is, it's like my years of chronic pain in my brain have caused an issue where if like a neuron misfires in my brain, if you think of my body, my nervous system and my brain like a computer system, my nervous system sees that as like a red alert, and in order to try and preserve itself, tries to switch my system off like a computer. It tries to reboot basically. So it's like someone's hit the restart button. So sometimes when I can feel it coming on, because I get warning signs it comes on, thankfully, I can use different techniques to try and regulate my nervous system and bring it back down so it doesn't kind of go into this fight or flight mode where it shuts my whole brain and nervous system off. I can't always do that if I have a lot of pain or if I'm fatigued, because I don't have the strength to do it. And there's sometimes where I can feel it coming on, and like if I'm in work, I might be able to put it off for the moment, but then when I get home, I know I'm going to crash at some point and I'm going to have a seizure. And sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 40 minutes. There's no real way of knowing. And then I actually have 3 chronic illnesses because I got diagnosed with endometriosis last year as well, which is an issue where tissue from outside my reproductive system is growing all over my abdomen and my organs, and causing cysts. So that causes chronic pain as well, and a couple other health issues that we're currently working through. The Lord sustains me through it all, and I am managing. Praise the Lord. So, but it's a lot of it is pacing myself and managing. So if I have something planned for, okay, case in point, Friday, I actually got quite sick with an endometriosis flare after work on Friday. And I ended up having to cancel all of my Saturday plans to be able to go to church on Sunday.
Okay.
So it's managing different things. It's a bit of a balancing act. I don't always get it right, but I try.
I suppose it's hard to wrap my head around just that, you know what I mean? I see you now and you're so joyful and bubbly like you always are, you know, and just to think that you're always on a constant level of 2 out of 10 pain. I was having a conversation with someone just yesterday at a wedding I was at, and I was saying to him how the body is such a powerful mechanism, that the body has a way of adapting to pain, coping with pain. Like if you have a pain in your back on the right side, you naturally go like this to try help absorb the pain. And because it's something you've lived with such a long period of time, like in terms of your when you're going about your day knowing that you're at a constant level of 2 out of 10, like does it frustrate you, or is it because you're so used to it that the frustration is no longer an aspect of it?
I think I had a lot more frustration before I was saved. I think I know that whatever is happening is in the Lord's hands. I'm a massive control freak in a majority of ways. And control is something I really struggle with. But the Lord has really been teaching me about that. And so much of it is I can just place whatever's happening in the Lord's hands. So a lot of the time, if I'm getting really, really frustrated, it doesn't always work, but a lot of the time I try to just stop and give it to the Lord. And I'm like, if I have to stop today, I have to stop today, but the Lord will carry me through and I will get through it. It's frustrating for the likes of work, or trying to be there for my friends if they have an event on or something and I'm not well. Like most of the time it's about managing. So like 80% of the time you see me, I probably have a heat patch stuck somewhere on my body to try and help with the pain, or something like that. Or, you know, stuff like yesterday at church, everyone was stood around talking and I just turned to one of my friends and I was like, I can't stand. And she was like, no problem. We went and sat down and people came over to us instead. It's just small things to kind of manage. But it can be frustrating. Like the Lord is good and he sustains me. There was still a day last week where I had a seizure and I spent, I'd say 40 minutes crying after it because I was frustrated and I wanted to be able to take a shower without having a seizure. So it's up and down. It's certainly not as bad as it was when the pain first started. And even looking back, I handled the diagnosis of the endometriosis a lot better than I handled the FND diagnosis. But that was because the Lord was sustaining me through that, and I had given it all to him the whole process along, and it truly makes such a difference. It doesn't
Yeah.
solve anything, but it makes a difference.
I think it helps put your faith into action, doesn't it, in a very real
Mhm.
sense? Whereas prior
Mhm.
to Christ, you had so much frustration and you didn't know what to do with it. So, as you said, you would naturally do what most people do, which is go partying and drinking and clubbing
Yeah.
and bubbling and all that sort of stuff. Whereas now you have not only do you have a living relationship with Jesus, the one who
Mhm.
wants to take your burdens and give you peace in a very real sense, despite the pain.
Mhm.
He may not take the pain from you, but he gives
Yeah,
purpose to it. There's a ministry that happens in the midst of it, right?
absolutely.
And then to think how not only has he saved you and brought you into his family, but he's also brought you into a wonderful church. Who I know some of the
Absolutely.
members who go to your church, and I know these are people who have walked with the Lord a long period of time. And
Mhm.
oftentimes I know for myself, so my mom suffers from seizures. She has
Mm.
epilepsy, right? And my
Yeah.
mom has had some severe seizures to the point where like all I can do is put her in the recovery position so that she doesn't
Yeah.
swallow her tongue, right?
Yeah.
And
Very tough.
it's really it's frightening for me, but I can't imagine what it's like for her. And
Mm.
oftentimes when people hear that someone has an illness, they can feel a little bit awkward because
Mhm.
they're not sure of the illness, and because they're
Mhm.
not sure of the illness, they're not sure how to support or how to
Mhm.
act. Or and I suppose I want to ask you, because you're in part of a very active church community,
Mhm.
how has the church community helped you, maybe not take the pain from you, but help you when you have a seizure or you're having a difficult day?
Mhm.
That support unit, what has that been like for
Mhm.
you?
It's honestly been more amazing than I can put into words.
Yeah.
Coming and finding my family in Douglas Baptist Church has
Mm.
just been insane. They've really just accepted me exactly as I am.
Yeah.
Um, and never an expectation for me to be healthy or 100% or anything like that. And I'm so, so lucky with the family that the Lord has given me there. That like so they all laugh at me when someone new comes in because they get really confused if I have a seizure,
Mm.
because I have asked, it's my preference that if I'm having a seizure, that someone makes sure I'm not. I have managed to box myself in the face a couple of times or hit my head. So my
Okay.
preference is, because I get warning signs, I often will tell Sean or whoever is with me, I'm gonna have a seizure. I just need to get on the floor. And they're like, fine. I get on the floor. All I ask is that they make sure that I don't hit my head. And other than that, I'm like, I want you all to keep talking. Like, I want you to keep going as if it's not happening. Because I
Sure.
hate attention on me when it's happening. It makes me feel much worse because I'm slightly aware of the noise around me. If I can hear something, it's a bit easier for me to try and like hold on to that and use that to keep me grounded and bring me through the seizure without panicking. Um, but I say it must look so funny because if I have a seizure like at basic or something, our young adults group on a Monday night, like I could be in the corner and someone has their hand on my head and I'm seizing and they're all chatting away, grand and happy and blah 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 and laughing away. And I'd say it looks bizarre, but it's what I've asked of them and it's what they do so wholeheartedly. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I know that they're watching out for me and they're taking care of me. One of my friends is Rachel. She's amazing.
Mm.
I had to leave church 2 weeks ago I could feel one coming on and I just helped. Sean wasn't there. So I just grabbed Rachel and I was like, I'm going to have a seizure. She's like, right, let's go. Brought me down the back.
Wow.
I could hear her during the seizure and she spent the whole time of the seizure praying over me and singing worship and putting on my favorite worship song and like
Wow.
doing deep pressure on me because she knows that can help. And it was so loving of her.
Yeah.
And not only did she come and leave with me, but she was so focused on making sure that I can know that like the Lord was with me and that she was praying for me. It was so wonderful. And one of the biggest things for me was, for so long I was known as the Roisin, sick Roisin, or pain Roisin, or the Roisin who's chronically ill. Like that's how I was
Sure.
known. Um, and getting ready for my first youth camp with the church, I remember my one of our elders, wives Carolyn,
Yeah.
amazing woman, she turned to me and I will never forget. She said, "We do not see you as Roisin who is chronically ill. We see you as Roisin who is a daughter of Christ." She said, "We
Yeah.
see you as Roisin who is a Christian and who is loved by the Lord." And that, so I'm getting emotional.
You're okay, girl.
that
You're okay.
was that was so important for me because it was the first time I realized that my identity was in Christ and that that's how it was viewed by others as well.
Yeah.
And that I was loved unconditionally in that way, and it wasn't that they put up with my health or they deal with it, because I do feel like a burden a lot of the time, especially to Sean. Um, but they are so amazing about not letting me feel that way and knowing that I'm loved, and that if this is the way the Lord has made me, then this is the way that they will love me, and that's a true blessing.
And I think that definitely helps you because
Yeah.
I think as humans, we are so self-aware
Mm,
of our surroundings, of the people that are in the room, and we can be like, if we say something stupid, naturally we're looking at everyone to see if it's
yeah.
did anyone recognize that. But then obviously for someone like yourself, when you have a seizure, naturally you're aware that there's people around. But it speaks to who you are a lot, Roisin, how you just want people to get on with it once you're in a comfortable position. Like I think it's awesome that you have that spirit about you where it's like, yeah, I'm. It's almost like you've come to terms with it, and you know
Mm,
what the illness is, but you also know who you are in Christ. You're a daughter.
yeah.
You're not
Yeah. Which is
Roisin who's chronically ill. You're a daughter, which you said so wonderfully.
Yeah, which is amazing. And it's one of the things as well that has really helped with managing the seizures, is knowing that, like, okay, this is not something I can control. It's not something I know when it's coming on, but he does, and he's not going to put me in a situation where he's not watching over me.
Yeah,
So, like, however it happens, it happens. But I, at the end of the day, I can trust in him, and he has me held so tightly.
that's
So
right. It's wow. That's yes. My goodness. Wow, it's a lot to take on board to know that someone could go through so much in life. But I'm so touched in my heart to know that your church community is not only aware, but they're also on board with
they're
it,
amazing.
because that's what helps.
Yeah.
You hear about it all the time. A brother loves at all times. A friend is born for adversity. I'm probably butchering it, but that's just paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But it's really in moments like this where the rubber hits the road and stuff happens where you really see love on full display.
Yeah, absolutely. And even I think, like, even now, like leading up to like the wedding, even,
Hmm.
like, everyone is coming to me and being like, whatever you need me to do, like, there's no problem, like, don't burn yourself out, don't do too much. Like, even, but also never treating me with pity or with
Sure.
like I'm a broken doll they need to protect. It's such genuine love and support. And it even, like, it's even the fact that I can go to church and know that if I have to step out to take a seizure, no one's going to be like, oh, there she goes again, like, walking out
Yeah.
in the middle of a sermon. Like, everyone knows and everyone loves. And like, I, even if that happens and let's say I come back out of the back room at tea and coffee time, like, I have people who come up to me suddenly and are like, are you okay, can I get you a cuppa, will you sit down, do you need anything, like.
Sure.
And it's this thing where they know I don't want a big fuss made about it,
Mm,
but I can still tell that I'm being cared for, which
yeah.
and I'm being accepted, which is the main thing.
And yeah, like and even as I'm hearing you talk, Roisin, I can't help but think about just how for you, fate in the midst of an illness is a very real thing.
Mm,
It's really fate on display every day of your life because it has to be.
yeah.
You think of the Apostle Paul, everyone thinks, everyone says he wrote most of the New Testament, which he did. Phenomenal man. Some of the most encouraging times of me in my own
Hmm.
personal walk with the Lord is when I'm reading Ephesians or Philippians, Colossians, the prison epistles. But the guy was small in stature, was shipwrecked, stoned. And when I say stoned, I'm not talking about like little pebbles, like
Yeah.
stoned, like his
Yeah.
his head would have been disfigured. And if I know anything about the human brain, when your head is disfigured, your brain is getting damaged. And he had to walk with a limp. He had a thorn in his side. There's many other examples in the scripture where people had an ailment or something. And what I love about it is most in my own life right now in my church, right? Some of the most encouraging people in my life are people who are currently serving the Lord in the midst of pain, in the midst
Mhm.
of real health issues where they literally have to walk with a stick, or some of the guys have a certain back brace on, or
Mhm.
some guys are going to the doctor every second or third week to get a blood dialysis, like very real stuff.
Yeah.
So it's in those moments where I'm so touched and so encouraged to know that it doesn't have to cripple you. In
No.
fact, it actually makes the message even more powerful to
Mhm.
know that despite who you are, what you're dealing with, that the power of Christ is still made evident, just in a
Mhm.
different way.
Absolutely. Like, I even see it with I do a lot of youth camps. I do, shout out to MCC camps. I do MCC
Yeah.
camps. But I even spoke at I gave my testimony at
Oh,
senior camp at Easter, and blubbed through the whole thing as I always do, and I cried because I can't get over how good God is every single time.
sure.
Um, but I was talking about it at the end, and we had been talking. Sam Ross was speaking, and he was amazing, speaking on anxiety and identity in Christ.
Mm,
Um, and I was trying to get across to them that, like, I'm not saying that when you trust in Christ, all your problems go away. That didn't
mm,
happen. I got diagnosed with my third chronic illness when I trusted in Christ. Like, that's not what
yeah.
happened. But the difference is huge because you're not going through anything alone at any moment of any day. And
Yeah.
that's what gets me through, is that even when I'm stuck in my bed by myself, right in pain, like, God is with me through that whole process. Like, he never leaves me nor forsakes me. Like, he is right there with me. Um, and that is what holds me together a lot of the time, is that, like, we're never left alone in the suffering, and that I may not see a purpose for it and I may not see a use for it, but he
Mm,
does.
yeah.
And if he can use anything of my life to glorify him, if it's the pain, okay, go for it. And it happened at senior camp 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. I shared my story, and a camper came up to me and said, I've been diagnosed with this condition. I'm really, really struggling. How
Wow.
do you find joy in Christ in this? And I talked to her and I talked to her, and I found out recently that she's been attending church regularly. So I'm
Wow.
there going, God, whatever you need to give me, like, you're using it for your glory. Like, and like, that's not a thing about me or anything, but like, it's just that anything in my life, that's why I'm always very, very open about my health, about any part of it.
Yeah.
Because you never know what you share. That could be the thing that plants the seed for the Lord to grow.
Yeah.
So,
Incredible. I have a verse that I want to share, if that's okay, Roisin,
mhm,
from Isaiah chapter 43, verses 1
mhm,
to 2. You've probably heard it before, but I love it. It says the following: But now, O Jacob, listen to the Lord who created you. O Israel, the one who formed you says, Do not be afraid, for I have ransomed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. And this is the one where this one's incredible. Listen to this. Even when you go through deep waters, I will be with you.
mhm,
Even when you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown.
mhm,
Even when you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you.
mhm.
We won't be consumed because we've been consumed with the love of Jesus. He
Amen.
is holding us together. And I love how it says, even when. It
Mhm.
shows that the Lord knows that there's going to be those even when moments. And that's when the
Yeah.
rubber hits the road, where faith is activated. It's
Mhm.
nice and comfortable. I'm sitting on a swingy chair here. Oh, I love the Lord. Yeah. But what about if I
Yeah.
wake up tomorrow morning and news happens? Like, for instance, my dad was incredibly sick for the last
Yeah.
maybe 7, 8 weeks. And that's where faith hits the road, where it's like, Lord, I want to be there. I want to be able to help dad, but there's nothing I can do right now.
Yeah.
That's a very vulnerable situation, and I'm praying on his behalf and just watching the Lord give him a mercy moment where the Lord was able to give him much needed rest when he went into the hospital.
Yeah.
And for some people, there's instantaneous healing. For other
Mhm.
people, it's a journey, and some people don't. It could be not this side of eternity that they don't experience. I
Mhm.
don't know how it works for people, but I always think of, and I think the older you get, you think about heaven more.
Mm.
And like often when I first became a Christian, I thought heaven was the most boring place in the world. Like the Tom and Jerry heaven where they're just chilling on the cloud playing harps. Because if that's the case, I don't
Yeah.
want to go there. And then just to think that there's going to be a day where every pain, every
Mhm.
struggle, every confusion, every sickness is going to be disappeared. Like
Mhm.
I can't fathom it
No.
because we're so used to dealing with it all now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
It's
oh,
definitely, it's something for me. And I have a friend who also has multiple chronic illnesses. And she was also a massive encouragement to me in those first few months of faith.
mm,
Her being so, once again, open and honest about her health and the way she struggled, but how she saw goodness in God and could glorify him through it.
sure.
Um, and we've talked about it, and we're like, I don't remember what it's like to be pain free. I have no idea. I have no
Wow.
idea what it feels like to never be fatigued or pain. I have no recollection before the age of 10 as to what it felt like.
Wow.
Like, I know I was, and I have memories, but I don't remember how I felt. So for me, like, it's almost slightly scary in a way because I have no idea. I have no idea what it's gonna like, what it's gonna feel like. But once again, I just have faith and trust that I don't care if I'm not healed in this lifetime
Wow,
because I will be pain free there. I will be with him, and in if I'm not healed before then, he's gonna use it for his glory any way
that's
he
right.
can.
Wow.
So, and I don't need to be afraid of it because he knows what's gonna happen. So this
Yeah.
once again is me learning about the control thing to give it to him.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think an appropriate way of how to bring the podcast to a close is a very simple. It may sound like a simple, cheesy question to ask, but maybe there's people listening to this and they've got friends who are dealing with illness, sickness, pain in a very real sense in terms of their health.
Mhm.
How can they support their friends in a very real sense? Because you can feel very awkward. You
Mhm.
want to do everything, but you don't know what to do, so you're afraid to do anything, so you don't do anything.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
could you give us maybe some examples or practical tips that you've learned that you've seen people put in action for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things I think is going to them and
Mm,
just being completely honest with them. So one of my friends came to me one day and she was like, "I see you struggling and I really want to help. I do not know how to help. Tell me what I can be doing for you." And it was as simple as that for me, which it seems really simple and stupid, but genuinely asking them, and
mm,
I think being willing to do something even if it's something small. So for example, one of my friends, I she was asking me one day how I was managing my health and I was saying I was struggling and she was like, "Okay, what area are you struggling with that I can help you? What can I do?"
well,
So I said to her, I said, "Okay, I'm really struggling. I am someone the Lord has definitely made a people person. And one of the big ways that he encourages me and I think keeps me connected is fellowship and time with other believers, especially because my family aren't believers and I live at home. So that's a
sure.
huge thing for me um, to stay connected. So one of the things I said to her was, okay, I feel like a burden and like I'm ungrateful if people ask me to hang out and do things and I keep saying no because I'm not able, because I
Mm,
don't have the health levels. And it's not that I don't want to, I can't express how much I want to, but
yeah.
I physically cannot. And I was like, so I feel like a burden. And like, if I don't say yes to things and go to things, even though I'm not able, people are going to stop asking me. So she was like, okay. So she's like, so would it help you if I made sure that whatever is happening, that I invite you, even if you told me you're feeling really bad, that I invite you so you know that you're wanted, regardless of how you're feeling. And you know that you can tell me no and I will not take it personally.
Yeah.
I was like, that would be amazing. And she's put it into practice the last 2 months and it has been incredible for me that she'll text me and be like, oh, a bunch of us are going for a walk on, Saturday morning. And I'll be like, my heart says yes, my body says no. She's like, no problem, mind yourself, see you Sunday. But I'll still get a text 3 days later when they're going for another walk or going to the cinema or something that
Wow.
she's keeps pursuing me. And that's a big thing I'd say as well. If you have anyone in your life who is struggling with chronic pain or chronic illness, even if they're off the grid, even if they haven't been there in a while, check in. How are you doing? I'm praying for you. Can I pray with you? Can I ring and just pray with you or send a voice note and just pray with them? That's one of Sean's favorite things to do, which I think is an amazing way to minister to people, is that if he's thinking about someone and he's going to pray for them,
Yeah.
he'll send them a voice note of him praying so that they
Wow.
know that he has actually prayed for them, not just, oh, I'll pray for you. He's
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
So I think that would be one of the biggest things is just making sure that they're included, that they know they're loved and know that they're wanted. And that
Mm,
even if they say no or they can't do things, that they're not a burden. They're not someone you're going, oh, she's canceling again. That you keep pursuing them and keep pursuing the friendship, even if they're not well enough at that point. Because when they are feeling well again, they're gonna feel like they can come back to you and reconnect again, and it's appreciated more than words can say.
wow. Yeah. Wow. That's my goodness. I didn't expect the advice to be like that. It's it's the importance of understanding, isn't it? You know,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that we don't have the power or sometimes the ability to do anything. Sometimes you can't help people just because if you're saying it's pain, there's nothing we can do.
Yep.
If you have heat patches, that's as much as they can
Yep.
allow, you know, and it's wow. I really appreciate how you shared so vulnerably, honestly, because I didn't know I know Sean would mention because Sean used to be my housemate for about a
Mhm.
year and a half before he decided to get engaged to the wonderful Roisin in front of me here and I would have many conversations with Sean in the hallway right here where we'd just be talking about many different things. And he'd often say about times where you'd have a seizure and he'd literally just be sitting beside you and just like reassuring you that everything's okay. Like you were saying what your friend done for you in church recently. And
Yeah.
the power of that reassurance. It's,
Hmm.
we talk about it all the time, reassurance, but it's, yeah, hey, you're okay, you're cared for, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And in those moments where you said you're semi-conscious, like I'm trying to even imagine what a semi-conscious state is, but it's
Mm.
incredible to know that you have
Mm.
friends like that who just ask the question and don't feel, because Irish people, we're very awkward.
We're
We
very awkward.
we won't even ask.
But
We'll just assume they don't want our help. And
yeah.
we're just going, I won't bother because I look like a fool.
Mm.
You know, we're
My One of the big things Sean has had to get me to stop doing is when he asks me how I am, going, yeah, I'm grand. He's like, grand isn't an answer. Grand isn't a feeling. He's like,
mm,
like, talk to me.
yeah.
And yeah, and like that, I think it's this thing, like you were saying there, reassuring, like Sean is the biggest blessing. Like
Mm,
you have no idea. I'm gonna talk to him for a second, but he's just the
yeah.
biggest blessing. Like especially with the seizures,
Mm,
because I spent so long thinking that no one would want me when I was so sick.
sure.
Um, in that way, and he's amazing, because I know they're scary for him when he's sat there and he can't do anything and he can see that I'm in pain and I'm not well. Um, but like that he's just there for me and he just
Mm,
reassures me is one of the biggest blessings as well. Um, and like that it's just knowing that someone is there for you, and like one of the big things he says, I'm right here, I'm not going anywhere.
yeah.
And like that for me is all I need to hear, because I know that no one is, like, I'm not going to be left because of it. And also he'll say that, and then he'll say, the Lord has you held tight. Like I know that the Lord is with me as well. And I think it's that thing of, how do we emulate Christ?
Yeah.
We make sure that we're there for our brothers and sisters. We uphold the people around us, and that's
Yeah.
so important.
And even as I'm listening to the dialogue, Roisin, I can't help but think how, you were saying about how Roisin reached out to you in college, and I can't help but see the fingerprints and the guiding hand of the Lord on your life
Hmm.
to bring you up into this moment after Roisin. Then he connected you into a
Yeah.
church. Then he brought Sean into your life. Just how Sean
Yeah.
wasn't even in Cork. Sean was in Kerry.
It
Sean
wasn't
moved to
true.
Cork. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, Kerry, Tralee. Yeah. But you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just to see, and then he's brought you together. He's brought you and Sean are opposites in a lot of ways, but you're the perfect
Hmm.
match.
Yeah.
To think of a guy
Absolutely.
like him who I know without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, because I've had many conversations with him, one of my favorite people in the whole world. And I know that he will literally, when you said that he would drive to Waterford, I know he was going to drive to
He
Waterford.
would. He'd do
And
anything.
if you were in Dublin, it was Dublin he was going to. If it was Belfast,
Mhm.
legit, regardless of a 12-hour or 13-hour shift,
Yeah.
makes no difference. And that's the Lord's provision on your life,
Amazing.
despite
It
what you're
really
currently walking through, that he brought someone like a Sean
is.
into your
Hmm.
life who's going to stand the test of time with you, despite whatever the road ahead holds for you. He's holding you,
Absolutely.
but Sean is walking with
Mhm.
you as well. And that's
Absolutely.
something to be encouraged with today, do you know?
Yeah. Absolutely, it's such a blessing in ways I can't describe. And like you said, like the way he was moving everything for those timings and stuff, it's just amazing. And I think as well, we were so lucky that we were friends for 6 months before we started dating, and that let us lay such a strong foundation.
Yeah.
Um, and I think because I was so open and honest about my health, Sean knew exactly what he was signing up for, which I was worried he didn't, and I was really panicked about it. And I know how many times we had a conversation where he was like, "I know what this is. I know what I'm in for. I'm happy. Like, you were okay." Because for
Mm,
me, it was a lot of, once again, being reassured that this is what he wanted, but we knew it was what the Lord was calling us for. I'm
yeah.
so sorry if you can hear screaming. My dog is freaking out downstairs. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. That's all good. If it was a cat, it'd be a different story. But because it's a dog, I love dogs. It's all good.
She's howling like someone's left her alone, and she's fine. So
Wow.
apologies.
It's all good. But Roisin, I genuinely mean this from the bottom of my heart. When I asked you to come on, prior to recording this, and you didn't hesitate, because I told you very specifically if you could come on and talk about this, because it's a very real thing that a lot of believers are walking through, different sicknesses, different,
Mhm.
life struggles. And I really think it's important that we had this dialogue. So thank you so much for coming on.
No
Really
problem. Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much for having me. Like I said, it's an area of my life that has definitely brought its challenges, but any chance I can to use it to share the glory of God is such an amazing opportunity to serve Him. So I'll always take it. So thank you so much.
Awesome. And for those of you that are listening, maybe as you've listened to this podcast episode, maybe a friend, a family member, a work colleague is dealing with something similar to what Roisin has, a pain, an illness, a sickness. Maybe why not send this to them and just be a blessing to them, allow this dialogue to maybe help them, minister to them in their current stage of what they're dealing with. and trust what the Lord might do. And if Roisin has encouraged you anyway, if you're Irish, don't be stingy. Send her a text, a voice note. Let her know that you enjoyed the dialogue, that she was a blessing to you in a particular way. Be specific with your encouragement. Don't just say great episode, because that's cheesy. Great episode because take it a step further. Encourage her. Bless her today because she was a blessing to me on this podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next week, take care. God bless. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Hope Sessions podcast. Did you enjoy the episode? Maybe did it encourage you or motivate you? Do you think there's someone in your life could benefit or be blessed by this episode? If so, then why not send it to them? Lastly, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you use. This massively helps to spread the podcast literally all across the world. And don't forget, the hope is to life as oxygen is to the body. God bless you and have a wonderful week. Take care.